Hello my friend, welcome to today's discussion, which is Mystic Succession versus Mystic Awakening. Basically, today I'm going to try to answer the question of which one is better, mostly in grinding. I'm not really going to talk about PvP at all, because I only tested this in PvE, grinding, at Pila Ku Jail, and because I personally don't really do PvP, I'm a mostly PvE player. For me that's most important, and I will let the PvP discussions, for someone else. Basically, I realized yesterday, after we got the first Black Desert anniversary gift, that I can freely reset my skills for the next 2 weeks, as much as I want. So why not use this opportunity to actually, properly test the differences between Awakening and Succession. For those of you who saw my video yesterday, you may remember I said that I only got to spend about half an hour on the Succession tree when it came out. I tried the skills a little bit, and my conclusion, my initial impression was that the skills felt kind of clunky. It didn't feel like they flowed very well into each other. The Mystic felt a little bit less mobile. It was harder to recover shards, and just in general the playstyle didn't seem to match what I was looking for. So I went back to the Awakening. Now, yesterday I started grinding Pila Ku Jail as my attempt to make a money per hour video. More on that, I suppose, in a few days. But I then, as I said, realized I could compare Succession and Awakening. For today, my plan was to spend 2 hours on Awakening and then 2 hours on Succession, grinding the exact same rotation, the main rotation as I call it, at Pila Ku Jail. It might not be the main rotation, but whatever. And then see on which skill tree I got a faster clearing speed, in this case a faster trash per hour value. I kind of forgot at that time of testing that I could use Martin Stones for monster per hour value, and so we are just going to be discussing about trash per hour values and other stuff. I don't really think it's too important, the monsters per hour value. I might do further testing in the future if it's required, but for me, as you will see at the end of this video, I got my answer and it's pretty much clear to me which one is better. So first I'm gonna start with the 2 hours on Awakening because, taking stuff in order. The first session ended up with about 7.3 thousand trash in the first hour. I basically timed them using a loot scroll. All of the sessions used a normal 50% loot scroll to get the trash values, and basically after the loot scroll ended, that was 1 hour. The second session was actually a little bit faster, and I would honestly say it's either because of fluctuations or because I took a 1 month break from the game, and it probably took me that first hour to get used to grinding again. So first hour was 7.3 thousand trash, the second one was 7.7, almost 7.8 thousand trash in this second hour, and the average between these two sessions was 7.5 thousand trash at at Pila Ku Jail. So that's more or less my baseline for the Awakening. I will say I tried my best to grind fast. I don't know, I basically grinded as I normally do while watching something on my secondary monitor, and I tried to pay attention and grind somewhat efficiently, I suppose. I'm not perfect, I make mistakes. Sometimes I grind faster, other times slower. I just try to keep it consistent. So that's our baseline, 7.5 thousand trash in these 2 hours. Now for Succession, I was hoping it would be either the same or faster, because I hear from a lot of other people that Succession for most classes seem to be better at grinding, so I was expecting it to be better, but also I hear from other people that Mystic Succession is supposed to be one of the worst Successions compared to other classes, so I heard mixed things. Before we get into the Succession part, I would like to point you to my weapons and the durability of them, because that's something very important, as you will see on the Succession tree. After grinding Pila Ku Jail for 2 hours without leaving the area, my weapons didn't break at all. It's worth noting that all 3 weapons are branded, so they break slower than normal weapons, but still, I have branded weapons. I grinded for 2 hours and yet they didn't even go below 50% durability. That's more or less what I am used to, and typically for my Mystic, I expect to be able to grind about 3 hours on an area before I have to go somewhere to repair. I personally don't have a tent, so for me that's very important, and you will see why basically right now. So getting into the succession part, I unlearned every single skill and I went the succession route and basically maxed out everything there is, because my Mystic has 2,100 skill points, so that wasn't an issue. I learned basically everything there is, including skills that I let's say never really use from the main tree, just to make sure I have everything that I could possibly need at some point. Keep in mind, I don't really have a lot of grinding experience with the succession tree. I basically poked around my camel. I poked around with the skills for about 10 minutes to get a feel of what button combinations they have and how to use them, stuff like that, before I actually started my first hour of grinding. So from the first hour of grinding, I immediately realized one thing, and that is half of the succession tree seems to be useless. Maybe it's me, other mystics might disagree with this, but I personally ended up using a lot of the kicking skills more than the ones that use fists. I believe 2 or 3 of the succession skills, mostly those that make me move backwards, those I very rarely got to even use in grinding, and you immediately notice the fact that succession skills have much higher damage than absolute skills, and the fact that I am not using my entire succession tree means that sometimes I have to fill in the time using absolute skills, and when I use those I usually don't one-shot a pack or get very close to it. And immediately I felt that on Awakening I didn't really have any issue. I was basically 100% of the time staying in the Awakening tree, and I was moving between packs without any issue, any dead time between my skills. On Succession, again, I might need more practice to know how to rotate the skills properly, but I very often found myself with a little bit of dead times at trying to repeat skills that were in cooldown and trying to avoid certain skills that would make me, let's say, either move backwards or that didn't seem to have enough damage or enough area. Some skills don't seem to have enough of an area of effect to hit enough monsters, so I try to avoid them. And my conclusion from the first hour was that it wasn't even a first hour. I tried to continue because remember when I said my weapons didn't even break to 50%? Yeah, I expected the weapon durability to be exactly the same. If you saw my main weapon, that one was at 100% durability because on Awakening I basically don't use my main weapon, and my Kutum I believe was at 65% durability left after 2 hours on the Awakening. On the Succession, my Kutum broke from 65% to 0 in 34 minutes, which is surprising to say the least. I didn't really expect that, and I honestly see that as a very big issue for me if I'm ever going to grind on Succession. So first session, 34 minutes, I got 3.9, almost 4,000 trash in these 34 minutes. If I was to be able to grind 60 minutes, it would be about 7,000 trash per hour, which is actually a little bit slower than the Awakening, but then again, I need time to adjust to the Succession tree, so that is probably lower than it should be. The second session on Succession was honestly not any better. I got a little bit better in terms of rotating my skills. I understand that The succession feels like it's a little bit faster paced. It feels like the mystic is moving faster, and as a result I feel like I have to pay more attention to grind just as good. It feels like I have to put more effort into the succession to make it be as good as the awakening. At least that's what I feel after this second session. This one again was not 1 hour. I went back to Valencia to repair my weapons. I came back with 100% durability, maxed out weapons, branded weapons, I remind you, and I got to grind 44 minutes before my weapons broke, which is basically the biggest red flag I could see for me to not really use the succession. I really hope they fix this in the coming weeks patches, because honestly, having branded weapons and not be able to grind even 1 hour is honestly unacceptable, because I cannot use loot scrolls properly like this, and I'm pretty sure I'm correct when I say that most people don't have tents. Most people tell me that I should buy a tent to repair my weapons wherever I want, but honestly I'm sure most people don't have tents. So that's more or less it. The average trash per hour for succession was almost 7.2 thousand trash. From the second session, if I was to grind 1 hour, it was 7.3 thousand. So honestly, if you look at the averages, it's 7.5 thousand trash from awakening average versus the 7.2 thousand trash on succession. As I said, maybe I was clearing slower the monsters, but my pets, which are mostly tier 3 pets with 1 tier 4, they were not really able to tell the difference. Yes, the average was slightly lower, but that could be just simply fluctuations. It's less than 5% of a difference, and honestly, if I get to train a little bit more with the succession skill rotations, I could probably grind just as fast. The problem is that the weapon breaks a lot faster, and it makes it mostly unusable for me, especially in areas like Pila Ku Jail, where the closest repair NPC is in Valencia. So as my closing statements, I'm going to say that first off, what are the differences that I noticed? First difference is that succession doesn't have any HP regeneration out of combat, which might be important. For example, if you're walking through the desert like me without any potions and without any tea or the other one, water, whatever, to remove the debuffs. In succession, I don't have any skills that recover HP without requiring me to hit a monster. So for example, even in Node Wars, if you want to recover HP out of combat, you cannot do that in succession unless you spam potions. Second issue is the weapons are breaking too fast. Third problem, half of the succession skills to me feel like they are not really that useful. Next issue is that the absolute skills on the main tree don't feel as useful as I would want them to be. I just feel like I'm still not really using the main tree as much, and instead of the awakening tree, I'm using the succession tree. It didn't really change much. It didn't make me want to use the normal main tree skills more than I did before. And also it's annoying that I have to use shards for every single dash. In any case, that's mostly the negatives. The only positive I would see for playing succession, in my opinion, is that the skill effects look better. Honestly, they look a little bit better. Maybe it's just because they are fresh and new to me, but they look interesting enough. And maybe slightly faster combat. The Mystic feels like it's moving a little bit faster, but that's about it. For me, the weapon durability is a deal breaker, and that's what I'm going to say. So what are your thoughts about this? Let me know in the comments. If you play a Mystic, what are your thoughts about Succession versus Awakening? If you play other classes, most importantly, if you play any other class besides Mystic, please let me know what is your situation with the Succession versus Awakening. For example, if you play a Witch, a Wizard, any other class, did you notice any differences like these in your transition between Awakening and Succession? And that's more or less going to be it for this video. I might do another one similar to this to test maybe areas where monsters are one-shottable, like Polyforest, or maybe Aquan Histria later on, but honestly this was just a quick test, a one-day test that I did just to see which one is right for me. And conclusion, just like I just like I said yesterday after my half an hour spent, yeah, Awakening is better and Succession needs a lot of work to be usable in my opinion. It's just there for fun. So I will see you with the next video. Again, let me know in the comments what you think about the Succession 3 for your personal class, and I will see you in a few days. Goodbye.